You're listening to Live Wild Radio, the part-time adventure podcast.
Join us as we explore how outdoor adventures build mind, body, and spirit.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know, when we start recording, we usually do like a little, like 5 seconds of dead air, because then it gives us like some test tone. So if we ever have to cut something out, we can put the dead air in. But everybody here couldn't shut the fuck up. So this is what happens. So I'm Winston.
I'm Catherine.
And this is Live Wild Radio. And tonight's episode is one where first we had the food.
And the drinks.
And then we had the drinks. And then the electronics came out.
And the food was fantastic, right?
It really was. It actually was.
Excellent.
It was very, very good. The beer was good. The wine was good.
Company was good.
Yeah.
All good.
Yeah.
And we realized we were telling too many good, funny stories.
That we should have started recording earlier.
So now we are here with Alyssa and Eric.
So tell us about yourself.
Who starts?
Alyssa does, of course.
Yeah, I mean, we met through climbing, actually. That's our main sport, our main passion, our main way of adventuring.
How long ago?
I think it's been about 3 years.
We met April 19th,
You know?
2017.
I think that's right.
I think so.
See,
yeah.
any of these commercials that painted that the guy can't ever remember?
At Climbers Rock.
He probably remembers better than I do.
Yeah.
So.
Now, I don't remember how we met, but, you know, but that's okay. You know, I'm maintaining the stereotype.
But yeah, so we met through climbing. That's the thing we love. I deal with a lot of fear and anxiety, and climbing's been this way to fight through those fears and meet awesome people, awesome community, get outdoors, which I also love. And I mean, we also hike. Then we got obsessed with van life, basically from a trip to Iceland where we rented a camper van because it was the cheapest option to go and see all of the landscape. Came home, we're watching every single van life video on YouTube, not even watching TV or Netflix anymore. And then all of a sudden we were able to get a van. We got one, started building it, and
How long ago did you get the van?
it was right at the end of March this year.
And you guys have like a Ford Transit?
We have a 2018 Ford Transit long wheelbase high roof variant.
So basically it's a plumber's van.
Pretty
Essentially,
much.
yeah.
And that for anybody who doesn't know,
Any generic trade person would be using this van.
yeah. So what used to be your sort of a Ford Econoline van, they went, you know what? These are really shitty. You can't stand up in them, and they made them taller. But on like a cube van, but putting like a fiberglass box on the back, which you look at funny and it breaks, and it's kind of a shit in the aerodynamically as far as wind goes. They made these new, you know, and this is probably like the last 15 years, they made these new construction tradesperson, electrician, plumber vans. Mm-hmm. And then somebody went, you know what, if put a little bed in the back.
I could sleep in that.
I can sleep in this. And hashtag van life was born.
Pretty much. And went viral.
Yeah, because
Pretty much.
Because it's much easier to buy a used like trade van and do a bunch of work yourself
Then spend $120,000 or more on some Mercedes Sprinter done by Winnebago.
So what does this van cost?
This is a pretty new van, so it was about $35,000 after taxes.
Okay.
But it's a 2018, still got factory warranty on it. But yes, there are cheaper alternatives. The Sprinter van is a very popular one, being the fact that you can purchase older models with higher mileage. You could probably get, I saw one around $17,000, $18,000, but no warranty. It could break anytime. So the Ford Transit was a lot more appealing to me just on the reliability aspect. And it's got the highest roof. I'm 6'2", so
That's a big deal.
So we obviously are less risk averse that way.
yeah. And resale value. This is like we could sell this thing at any point and
Yeah.
get back probably what we spent on
Yeah.
it.
And so tell us about what are your aspirations? Is that too early in the conversation?
it really is.
No,
like
no.
you, so forget about casual, like, you know, working, you know, like it's just like your mom died. How do you feel? Way to go, Catherine.
No. At this point, we want to have a vehicle to have fun in and go on weekend trips, go on week-long trips, just something that is more convenient than camping.
Well, see, and it's funny, like, because think about when we were kids. Did you ever see any of those vans that had the bed in the back and like they airbrushed, kind of scene on the side of it?
Oh, yeah.
And now what we have is like people have brought that back, right? You have a bed now. You might have a fridge and a stove and
Running
It's more
water?
legit.
right. But the outsides are boring as fuck.
Because it's
But that's
stealthy.
the magic.
Right, I know they're doing like now. If you had like a barbarian girl with a sword and a fur bikini airbrushed on the side, that still wouldn't say that it's a camper.
No, it wouldn't.
True.
I remember seeing just a bed, and it was or not a bed,
shag
but-
bed.
yeah, like a shag van back in the day, and it had like the airbrush thing on it, and it had a water bed in the back.
Have you guys ever slept in a waterbed?
Yeah, my brother had one for years.
Now imagine driving in one where it's just like
Sloshing back and forth.
So that was what the camper van was like in the 80s.
Yeah, the VW.
Well, no, that's a whole the Westfalia is sort of a legit. That was the early outdoorsy.
It was a
people.
European version,
Yeah,
essentially.
and when they came over here, that was like outdoorsy people before outdoorsy people were cool.
Mm-hmm. Advertising that they are outdoorsy people because they
Yeah.
drive a VW Westphalia.
Yeah. Oh well, then about 10 years later, then you'd have people with the Westphalia, and it was an advertisement of like, it's kind of like almost punk rock. Where back in high school you'd wear your Misfits T-shirt and nobody knew what that band was, but you did, so you were cool. Having a Westphalia in your head, it's like, I'm an outdoorsy person. I have a camper van. I'm cool. And now, it's become a thing where it's like, no, it's just way better to like whatever you're doing, just go get in bed than like have to set up a fucking tent and it's wet out and it's cold.
Exactly. Who
and-
wants to do that?
and so I think what we run into, because it's very popular among millennials,
Oh, yeah.
right? And I think we almost have a time warp, weird kind of like Freaky Friday thing going on, where you get the
Reincarnation.
well, I'm more about the body switching, like if you ever watch the the Disney movies, whatever. But think of it like this way, because who, like the RV camper, who was it super popular with? Super old people.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, all of the people who have commented on our van who have RVs are old guys.
Yeah.
Retired people that
Yeah.
have the time to go out and drive indefinitely, essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And so what we've run into is almost that Freaky Friday situation of people who are way, way, way younger, not anywhere close to retirement, going, yeah, what they're doing, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So what inspired this for you guys?
We've tried to think
they
about
went to
this.
Iceland, didn't you?
They
Listen?
did
And
Iceland. It was the Iceland
other
trip.
than that, I don't know what inspired it.
Did we talk about that here on
Yeah,
the podcast?
Yeah.
The Iceland trip exposed us to living in a vehicle for about a week.
I'm just like completely like.
And
I'm probably driving
then
home.
we caught wind of the whole hashtag van life. We didn't know anything about it before, and then we saw it, and we saw, oh, this is super cool. Look at all these amazing conversions people have done themselves, and then just got kind of addicted to these videos, and then figured, hey, we should do this. We have a lifestyle that we're into climbing and hiking, and we love traveling on a
Nice.
budget whenever we can, and this would fit in perfectly with our goals of just getting to see the world. On our terms, whenever we want, and the convenience of pulling into a campsite or a street or wherever, and not having to do anything beyond get out of the driver's seat and hop into bed, pretty much.
That, and I mean, you've been doing woodworking for a while. Our entire basement's a workshop.
Yes.
You're an engineer.
Yeah, I'm an engineer. I like
Definitely
woodworking.
appealing to you.
I like constructing things.
Yeah, if you
very
didn't,
cool.
if you didn't put all
Conversion
that
aspect.
education to work,
Yeah.
look, I made a thing.
Yes, the project aspect of building out the van was also very appealing.
And
Because it's been fun.
well, because that's the thing. Like, if you obviously sort of have like a corporate job where you work for a company, and you probably don't get to ever like actually, go from I have an idea and then I'm gonna like actually fully make a thing. It's all
Rarely,
part of like a
yeah.
big team, all that kind of stuff. There's something about going from like concept to completion, if that's some sort of corporate buzzword, but doing it all yourself, that it's like, I don't know, might not be perfectly square, but I did it.
Oh, believe me, Alyssa will tell me when things are not perfectly square.
Well,
I'm the quality control here.
I only say that just because I'm very much, when it comes to any kind of construction, a good enough guy. It's one of those things. It doesn't have to be pretty. It's just got to be good enough.
Yeah,
and so
that's perfectly fine for a van.
Yeah. So that's the way I would tend to end up doing it. Where this is why like home decor would never be my thing. Where it's like, it's fine. You realize this is a podcast, Captain?
Catherine's gone. We lost her.
You're just sitting there looking at me, nodding your head, like the listeners are going to hear that. We need a nod your head sound.
Push the button for the nod head sound.
It's kind of like a spring squeak.
Okay, I'm being present.
Fully present.
You always complain that I ask too many questions too quickly. I'm listening.
You've already done that, so.
Yeah.
Ask us a question.
Now it's like interview the podcaster.
Yeah, why aren't you guys living the van life? What's going on?
I have kids.
Kids wreck everything.
Hey, we've seen videos of vans that have 3 kids, 2 adults, 3 kids.
And you know what's happening at that point? Mama and daddy ain't never getting laid.
That's probably true too.
Send your kids out on a hike for a couple hours and you're good.
You kick your kids out. You put the "don't come knocking if the van is rocking"
You
sign.
can lock the doors. It's pretty easy,
Ma, you get leash. They don't go anywhere. Ding, 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 ding. Mom, I'm hungry. Drop some cookies. The kids will just. That'll give you the 5 minutes Dad needs. So, but that I think that's the big reason. Like my life has been almost like this, personally, like this up and down roller coaster as far as how much time I spend with the adventure. Because when I was young, I did a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. I've hiked the Appalachian Trail. I've gone and lived in the woods for a year, blah, 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 blah. And then it's like, then sort of grown up-y shit for a while and, because university and all these things. And then you get okay, I tried being an adult. It sucks. So now we're steadily working our life towards less and less adulting.
This whole podcast is going to be about millennials taking over the world.
Well, but it's so funny. Like we kind of have like the not old people, but older people on this side of the table and younger people on that side of the table. When I was a kid, older people were always like, "You kids, da 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 da." Now that I'm one of the older people, it's like, yeah, the shit you're doing is pretty cool.
Oh, totally.
Like,
I see that in the business world. I love it.
Yeah,
people are way more authentic.
It's like, wait, I'm not going to work myself to death. I want like a bit of a balance between working and.
Although around the age of 30, I found that's when I had my midlife crisis. I found that people were very
because you're only going to live to 60.
I found that people were really driven, to achieve their lifetime accomplishments. Like I was only 5 years out of university at that time, and it was like, did you have your kids? Did you have your senior level positions? Like, anyways, I find that people are often very driven, and then eventually, as you get older, you start to realize, especially as people pass away, right? What matters?
Well, I think our perspective is we'd see past generations wait till retirement to go on the trips and do stuff like that. And if you're adventurous, you're not waiting till retirement to go on these awesome trips when you can barely walk anymore.
Totally.
Like It's not realistic. So we very much plan mini retirements almost in a way, like as many trips as we can pack in the year. And they don't have to be expensive. You could just drive, go to Mount Marcy, hike up, you spend the weekend there and you head back. Like they're these mini trips usually, or finding really good deals. Like when we went to Iceland, I think we spent $500 total for both of us to go.
Oh, really? What time
flight,
of the year?
yeah.
Iceland itself, incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
But to fly over, so you can do it.
It was May of last year.
I think so.
Yeah.
And see, this is why we keep going to Vegas.
For the two of us
Same
round
with
trip.
us.
Yeah, we've discovered those cheap flights to Vegas too.
It's like wherever you want to jump off to, Because is it 2 something the ones that you're looking at right now, like 2 something American?
Yeah, through Swoop.
You can get flights for $99 with Swoop, but they're usually very specific days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might not be convenient.
No.
You get ones that are $69 one way from London, Ontario to Vegas.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'll
Like-
go back to the drawing board.
For all the London
No, but that-
listeners.
I think
Just
it's a
book
bit
it.
more expensive coming back Vegas to London, so they might get you there a bit.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I'm trying to make use of the Easter holiday because I get 2 days off. So
that's what we do. Every holiday we're gone.
Yeah, that's the thing. Become a climber.
Go to Kentucky.
And
That's
what
what
we
we're
do
doing.
in Easter.
Yeah,
oh,
we're,
nice.
we're going to the Red in November.
Oh yeah.
Because it's basically because it's 9 hours south of here. And if you look at the temperature we have right now, in a few weeks that'll be about the same temperature they have.
Yep.
Well, I can climb in this just fine.
It's great climbing weather.
She can belay in a puffy and then put some hand warmers in her chalk bag.
my butt.
I've been
my
doing that for the
underwear.
last 5 years, pretty much.
Yeah.
April and October, November.
Yeah, like that. Because as long as it's not raining,
Yeah, you're good.
I actually prefer the teens.
Yeah,
Like,
it's beautiful.
and last year, like literally, we were climbing in the Dax at 2. The high of the day was 2 Celsius. We drove down, so I'm fucking climbing. So, when did you guys start climbing?
I started climbing probably 6 years ago. Alyssa, 3 years ago.
Yeah, about 3.
Yeah.
Mainly indoor.
I started indoor, but pretty quickly progressed to outdoor. I discovered the escarpment, Niagara, or Rattlesnake Point, Mount Nemo, and took some lessons. So I got some top rope experience, some lead experience, and then took that back into the gym and did a lot more gym climbing, like 4 or 5 times a week for probably a year. And
See, climbing's one of those sports when you go, wait, I'm tall and I'm thin. I found something I'm good at.
Oh yeah.
It's like
He's great.
It's either climbing or like long distance running.
yeah, I was climbing 5'10s pretty much day one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
At 5 feet short, not my experience, but
No, but that's the thing. It's like women, and especially women that are shorter, or obviously guys that are shorter as well. If you just take the advice of Lynn Hill,
What's her height?
5'2".
yeah, or 5'1", something around there. Yeah.
Her thing is like get stronger and feet higher.
Yeah, you just need to be stronger and have better technique. That's
Yeah.
all. No big deal.
Whereas when you're tall, it's like, okay, that's cool. You just reach for something and you get it. I'm not tall. I'm not short. I'm just sort of that, blah middle,
Yeah.
and I'm fine.
Probably the perfect height.
I'd say like I when you look like Honnold's 5'11", Andres 5'11", I think Tommy's like 6'1". Now Jonathan Segrist is a wee fellow, and he's climbing 5'15".
Sean McCall.
Yeah,
He's
but
on the shorter side.
Yeah, but he's
Yeah.
still like 5'8", 5'9". So yeah, like it's one of those things where if you're a little shorter, you throw for stuff more. Where when you're a little taller and you got that wingspan of a condor, you just sort of just reach and like, oh, I got it.
It's so
You
it's so
overreach.
annoying. So annoying.
But here, look, this will be the one saving grace is that they're all going to be shitty at bench press. Like that high school show off thing of doing a big bench press. If you've got short arms, you don't have to move the weight as fast.
That's true.
It does well for you. So, there's always pluses and minuses to these things. Like whatever weird ass body you have, it's almost like we need that Soviet athletic system back in the day where they take the children and go, okay, you're going over here because you're built for it. And you're going over here because you're built for it. And then you end up with like, these freak athletes. When you add on all the Soviet steroids.
That helps.
Yeah. Because it's one of those things. You wouldn't be any taller, but your voice would be 2 octaves lower, and you'd be jacked as shit. I have no problem climbing because if you can't reach, you just feet higher and throw for everything. It's a more dynamic method. And that's how the Russians did it. And I think that's why Vladimir Putin looks like he does now, because the Russians just aren't killing everything. Because, when they got busted for like all the doping in the Sochi
yeah.
Olympics, if you've ever seen that movie Icarus.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have
It's
not.
really good.
Pardon?
I have not.
You have. You sat and watched it with me.
Did I?
Yeah. It's one of those. Okay, so
Are you sure?
Here's a question because you guys are a couple.
Are you making fun of me now?
So when you guys watch a movie together, does she fall asleep like a
She
quarter to
hates movies. I love movies. I will often fall asleep.
He'll fall asleep, not me.
Oh, okay.
If it's a movie, yeah.
Did I
Because-
fall asleep in that movie?
Yeah, well, you fall asleep every movie. Well,
I'm an early bird.
well, like last night when we watched a movie, you didn't fall asleep because you lost your attention span very quick.
I do have a short attention span.
I have
know-
a short attention span for movies. So he gets upset. He loves watching movies. I'm so not into it. And it's a struggle. And I'll try to sit there and then not touch my phone
Well,
and
now
not
here's
do
the-
anything else. But
The,
yeah,
other, the other problem we have is like we're both watching a movie for the first time, and then she's like, "Well, what did he mean?" It's like I fucking don't know. Right? Like we're both being exposed to this information at the same time.
Well,
I don't have like a cheat sheet to tell you what they meant.
yeah, but you're like more attentive to detail, so
Well, you know,
I'm just checking.
yeah, it's like, did I miss something? Probably.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's stop making fun of me now.
I don't make fun.
Yeah.
I just tell the truth.
I'm not sure if that's better.
That's true.
All right. So, Eric, you are an engineer for an aerospace company.
That I am. Yep.
Yes.
That's so fancy sounding.
It is,
Why do you think I
right?
got into this?
Was it?
It was the coolest sounding job I could think of back in grade 10.
Yes.
In my civics class or whatever class it was. Where you
Mistake
discuss-
number one.
Mistake number one. Yeah. What's the coolest sounding career? Aerospace.
The problem is you don't get to go into aerospace. I think it's problem.
I don't get to go into aerospace.
Unless you sign up. What was that program years ago that people could commit their lives to? Like
Oh,
some
yeah.
program for like.
Going to space.
Oh,
Is that
yeah.
the Mars?
My ex like contributed to that fund. I'm not kidding you.
Really?
Oh yeah, and I know somebody who actually applied to it. Yeah.
My dad applied as a joke, and he got a really nice, fancy
Did he?
rejection letter. He has framed in his bar. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Oh.
Would you want to go to space?
No, because,
The mountains.
well, it's...
Hey, they probably have some pretty epic mountains on Mars. Gotta say.
Yeah, but the getting there and the zero gravity.
You could climb better.
Spin
No.
the ship and then you got gravity.
Yeah, now you've got to spin it, like, because unless it's fairly big, you've got to spin it really fucking fast. To have, like, close to 1G. Like, I get there and, like, I'm all weak and feeble.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's why the astronauts actually do their exercises and all that shit.
Yeah, they
And
have to work out there.
And they still come back with, like, bone density of, like, elderly people.
Yeah.
I like having when I broke my shoulder and I got my X-rays, you know, in the ER, and the little Korean doctor said, you know, oh my God, if it happened to me, I break in half. You built like a bear. I like. See, I've never done that impression. She keeps waiting for me to do it on air, so I thought I'd do it this time.
There you go.
You're welcome.
It was like I literally had Tom Vu, the infomercial guy, as a doctor. You think these girls with me because I'm rich? Or no, it's because I sexy? No, it's because I'm rich. You want girls, you got rich too. That's Tom Vu. Like, you can find his commercials if he's probably in jail because it was all like a multi-level marketing scheme. But he was very funny. You know, like I would just sit and like there's nothing like, you know, eating, you know, like a pot brownie and watching like late night infomercials. You know, whether it's the ShamWow guy like Vince,
Oh, yeah.
you know, like one eye's bigger than the other. It's like, you know, kind of looks like a discount Johnny Knoxville. And then you have the guy with like the slap chop. Actually, I think that was Vince too.
Yeah, that was Vince.
He said
know.
a lot.
And then Vince got like arrested for like.
He beat a hooker or something
Well,
like that,
'cause
wasn't it?
Well, because I think because he found out the hooker had a penis, and then
Oh.
and then he didn't want it, and then she got mad and swung at him because he wouldn't pay or something. Because you know, it's like, I'm not into this, and then he bit her on the lip and some weird, you know. It's exactly what you would expect from an info commercial.
Kind of is.
Yeah. So like literally like watching all the late night infomercials.
Yeah.
You know, especially like when it gets to be 2, 3 in the morning on like just when that pot brownie is just kicking in. And you're just like, I think I must live in the Matrix. That's, you know, so I'm just saying.
Just saying. Okay. Tell us about your world, Alyssa.
My world.
We haven't finished with his world yet.
Yeah. Let's finish with
All
it.
right, finish with your world.
What's specifically about my world?
So what? Basically, you told us earlier what you do, but what do you do?
I design. First of all, I don't have anything to do with space, even though I'm an aerospace engineer.
Okay.
You're an aero engineer.
I'm an aeronautical engineer.
Okay.
And I design landing gear for airplanes. So I'm pretty much in front of a computer all day, working with CAD models, doing drawings. Not exactly an outdoor.
Do you ever say oops?
Do I ever say oops? Why do you? That's why we have many revisions.
This is my fear of flying sometimes these days. All right. Anyway, go on.
But no, we do a lot of testing. So any oops will be discovered in the testing phases.
Okay.
Well, I guess your
Except
company.
for that last plane that had all those problems. But
Oh, that was a software issue.
Yeah. Because that was like the 707.
That was the
47. The
7. What was that?
are you talking about the one-
737 Max.
737
Yeah.
Max.
737
Yeah.
Max.
First, never trust
That's not
anything
landing.
that.
That's not landing gear though.
No, that's just
software.
the whole
That's
thing.
the
is
airplane.
fun. Never trust anything that has Max in the title. Like Mountain Dew Max. Okay, that's the nectar of the tards. Do not drink them. Like something that looks like some sort of like weird, you know, barium enema stuff that's gonna be for like image radiant. You know, they're gonna stick up your butt so they can like scan your system.
yeah, it's a concerning color for sure. You shouldn't be
Yeah.
putting that in you.
Like nothing Max, Pepsi Max, fuck off with that. So first, no planes named Max that you should fly in. And if you make a plane, don't make it optional to have the software that makes it actually work, because then they'll go, it's okay, we won't get it.
It's like those disclaimers, you know, those waivers when you have to sign up for something. Everybody says, "Did you read it? Did you accept it?" Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah, of
Exactly.
course. Yeah, I
No
read
one
it all.
reads those.
No.
I read it all.
Accept. Let's get on with it.
Yeah. So basically, life and like day job is.
As an engineer.
Yeah.
Full-time engineer for the last 8.5 years, I believe.
And you find it fulfilling?
I find it fulfilling some of the time, but not all the time. And I do find that I work to live. It pays the bills and it pays for the vacations and the adventures that we get to go on, but it's not as fulfilling as I'd like it to be.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure a lot of people are in that situation.
Welcome to adulthood.
Yeah, most of the population.
You know, well, and that's when I was young. I was, we probably have no young people, no teenagers in high school, you know, before they've committed to things, listening to this podcast. So tell this to your children if you listen. If something stops being fun, stop doing it. Like seriously, like when I was young, somebody like got to the hit of only do shit you like to do because you only have so much time. So if you don't like what you do, you know, what the fuck are you doing? And it was interesting because they said, listen, there's lots of ways to make money. Like there's a lot of money out there. And this is even before the internet. Okay. Now there's lots more ways.
Oh yeah.
Right. But that idea of if you spend a third of your day waiting for that third to be over, right? Going, it's going to be almost 5 o'clock.
Counting the hours, yeah.
Yeah. Like, what are you doing? You know, like find those things that are, you know, like you pop out of bed excited to go to work in the morning. And that's sort of the thing that I've kind of done with my life is like I've run a bunch of different businesses, and it's always shit that I love to do. And when I stopped liking it, I sold it. You know, and obviously on any given day there'll be the shit you don't like to do.
For sure.
Right? You've got to do that. But if what you do doesn't excite you, develop a plan so that you can actually have a life that excites you. You know?
Absolutely. And if you really hate what you're doing, like there's a big cost to that. Not just the time you're there,
Oh, yeah.
but just how it drains you emotionally.
Well,
for sure.
And I'm convinced it does some bad wiring to your brain,
Oh yeah.
right? Because one of the things that Catherine and I talk about a lot is just how when you do new things or you do things that scare you, you actually get new neural pathways in the brain. Well, if you do something that sucks the life out of you, well, that's gotta, like, if doing something new creates new neural pathways, doing something that makes you feel dead inside. I'm not saying your job makes you feel dead. I'm talking big picture here.
As the table goes flying.
Sorry. I just thought I should make that caveat, because we sort of segued from, Eric's job. It sort of started me down a little path. But that, see, it's important in a relationship to be able to make the person you're with laugh. And I've never found any research done on this yet. But there has to be some sort of change that happens to you if every day is just, and you're just going through, the motions you have to, and the only reason you're doing it is, I got to trade some of my time for some money, so I got food.
I got to ask the question
Yeah.
because growing up, I feel like there's a lot of stress in society about the right job, house,
Status.
kids. Oh, yeah.
And you're Portuguese, so you had to have a living room with plastic on the furniture.
Oh, yeah. But especially, I do recall, my directors above me and everybody was from that generation, very uptight.
For sure.
All about the networking and the playing golf and doing the things that you don't like, the things that you sell your soul to do, the things just to get ahead. With your generation, do you find just people that you've talked to in the cultures that in the environments you've been in, is it that same environment or has it changed?
My environment definitely is. It's still a lot older demographic.
Okay.
Having that personal life balance is less of a priority for sure.
And I mean, on my side, for example, like I have a master's in industrial organizational psychology. And I remember one thing our professors would talk about incessantly was the need for work-life balance. And in that field, it's a big fancy word, but essentially it's just psychology at work. A big thing we study is work-life balance and making sure you don't burn out and all of this stuff. And they would tell us how important it was. It was a big part of our lessons. Yet they would also recognize we can't follow this and we're going to push you to do stuff that is not going to give you that balance, but we can't help it because it's so ingrained in us. But there was definitely a pushback against it with all of us who are younger. And I had an interesting experience of going to Europe for 2 weeks to be a part of their master's program, same kind of equivalent field. And it was interesting. The complaints were exactly the same. The students had a time to voice how they felt about the program.
Yeah.
And I got to sit in as an observer, and they outright said to their professors, "It feels like you give us work just to break us down." And the professors didn't feel that way. They felt like, oh, we're just preparing you for the work world and getting ahead and striving and all of these things you need to do. But that was not the perspective that anyone of our age had, that's what it should be. It felt more like you should love what you're doing. You should be passionate. Yeah, there's going to be hard days. There's going to be times you pull all-nighters. That happens. But at least most of the time, you should feel like you're getting something out of it. Like there's some purpose, like you're doing some good. And even if the professors could recognize that and understand it from a kind of more academic level, the culture, it was different. And you saw that kind of bashing up against each other, which I thought was fascinating because I thought, oh, maybe it's just us, but no.
Well, I think that's one of the fascinating things is that we have almost this illustration that culture dictates almost everything we do, but we each have our own culture, right? And culture is one of those things that's almost ingrained, if not in the DNA, in the at least epigenetics, the expression of the DNA. So you run into the thing where as time goes on, and probably explains a lot of the cultural or generational thing of old people going, these kids today, right? Is that idea of the cultures that come after us are going to be different. right? Because if they're not adapting to the changing environment, like species that don't adapt die. But people who've stopped adapting fear change, right? So when you see things different than you, like, and in a sense, it almost covers whether it's politics or all of these broader social issues. You like so many things come down to, I don't get that, so I'm afraid, right? And I don't like it, right? Because it's different and I don't know what it is, right? Like people that are homophobic, it's not that anybody's looking at you going, you're mighty fine looking, I'm coming for you. It's more just, that's weird to me, right? And I don't want to see things that are weird to me. Or obviously basically like trans is much more apparent or aware now. Like people are seeing that. So now you're running into the thing of like, I just got used to gays. Now what are you doing? Right? Like it's almost one of these things where, and before that it was like, women can work. Okay. I got used to that. Right? Like, but it's each of these cultural shifts that just slowly happen. And people want things not to change because change is scary.
Oh yeah.
Right? To take a sort of weird little side tangent, for a portion of the population, because then there's the those of us that get bored really easily, and I think this is why as somebody who's not young anymore, but I find hanging around with young people awesome. There's a vibrant thinking going on, whereas most people my age, it's like, oh, I'm too old for that. Fuck you, like.
It's so true.
You're not dead. You're not too old for anything.
No.
It's this is what I find fascinating is that you guys have identified this as an important thing at an early age that I wish I had done the same. I think the spirit was always there. It was just I was in a partnership with somebody different and they had different objectives and that was fine, right? But there's a new attitude, there's a new fearlessness, and there's and then this work-life balance. The work-life balance in particular, I'm all over. And I find overall the attitude of millennials and even those that are in CEO positions are very successful. It's way more informal, way more authentic. They're hard workers. They are fearless. They will adapt
Except for
to
Mark
change.
Zuckerberg. That dude is fake as shit. I think he actually might be a robot.
But overall, the people I see around me, they do have this sense of go-getter attitude, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And definitely the workforce of the future that people talk about, where people don't want full-time jobs, they want to consult. They can quite honestly make more money doing that. And if organizations don't get their shit together, they're going to miss out on this whole whack of talent. So I think you're not alone in this, and I think it's a whole new shift that's happening. When I talk to people my age, it's almost like they're dead. In my case, I co-parent. I do have the time to rediscover myself, but other people get stuck in.
I think even couples that don't split up should split up just so that one has kids half the time, the other has kids half the time. Because quite honestly, couples that stay together are fucked.
They do say they're less happy if you have kids and you're married.
No, or like maybe you stay together with your spouse, but you find a way that you only have your kids like 2 days on, 2 days off, and every second weekend, you'd be way happier.
Oh my gosh. I'm not. No, because I love my kids. And if I could have them more. I mean, at the end of the day, I make lemonades with any situation. So.
Yeah. You're so fucking lying.
No, it's not. It is true.
Yes, when they're not around, you miss them. But do you think if you had like little every night, and you couldn't go do shit, you couldn't come do stuff like this, that you'd be as happy?
I've adapted. It's a really interesting question. Obviously, I see the benefits of it. Like, I would not probably have lost 40 pounds. When you're married and you have kids, you sometimes are very cheap. We never were, we were very cheap to find babysitters to do the things we need to do to take care of our marriage, right? And you and I, like, that's so important to us. And I had to, for health reasons, to go to the gym. And even when I had my kids, half the time, put them in daycare and realized that I was going to compromise my time with. Sometimes you have to be in these situations of a crisis to make a big change, you know, whether it be that you've lost your job. Like, I was going through a reorg with my company and kept my job, but sometimes, or a marital breakdown or whatever, but it causes you to make a big change and reevaluate.
We need to disturb the equilibrium.
It's a good thing, actually.
It is. It's like it's not comfortable when you go through it.
No.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest growth always comes from the most painful moments. I mean, you don't grow when things are just going well,
No.
right? There's no incentive to.
No.
Like
You're too comfortable.
Exactly.
Who's that guy who's a Navy SEAL?
Jocko?
No, the other one that talked about he really loves putting himself through shit because that's when you grow. And
David Goggins?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing
Wrote
is,
a book.
almost every one of the Navy SEAls, that's the shit they like. If you got Jocko, will talk about it. Like,
Yeah, but he continues
Yeah.
to do it
Yeah.
after.
No, and his childhood story, you listen to his audiobook, is
Yeah.
dark.
And this
Real
guy's
dark.
lost, like, he was like way overweight and he overcame a lot to do what he did. But the point is that people die and they've left so much on the table regarding their potential. They'll never ever experience who they could be because they were too comfortable.
well, a lot of times it's not comfortable. It's that the misery I'm living in is tolerable compared to the unknown.
Yeah, it's
You
less
know.
scary. You know what you're getting, even though
You
you
know.
hate it.
It's like I'm getting beaten every day, but at least I know the beating.
But I'll tell you, leaving my marriage, the idea of can I survive? And until I worked out the numbers, actually, I'm like, I can survive.
At first, I was afraid.
But honestly, that was the unknown. As soon as knowledge is power, right? And as soon as you get over that and you face that fear, and honestly, I have way less now in my life, material things. Like, I live in an apartment.
Yeah, but you got a bomb ass new backpack.
I do, but I have way less things. I can only shop, honestly, for clothes. Value Village. I kid you not. I do not do my nails anymore. I color my own hair. Like, these are big changes in my life.
I cut my own hair. The shirt I'm wearing, I didn't buy. Hand me down. Yeah.
Yeah, but these were super big shifts. But I've never been happier. You know,
I agree.
and
You're welcome.
If I had continued the life I was, say I had a really great, marriage and all that, I'm spending all this money on stuff that really doesn't matter. The value really isn't there. I'm having way more fun now.
Yeah.
And it's a healthier lifestyle. Because when you look at people, when I looked at myself and I look at a lot of people my age, they look really old. Especially when you're online dating. You're like, you're how old? You're like you're 10 years older.
They probably
Dude.
are.
Yeah, they might be.
Little ridden hard, put away wet.
Anyway.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you need to look after your telomeres.
Keto
And-
diet.
You do.
Yeah, if you don't know what they are, then do some research, people. It's very important to you. That's little tails at the end of your DNA, and if they get all broken off, you age quick.
That's
and
right.
You look like one of them dried up apple dolls.
So let's talk about a little bit about your Instagram and your social, like what you're advocating.
Absolutely. So I'm on Instagram as Alyssa Outdoors. It was just my personal Instagram like anyone else. I was posting the highlights of my life, the best parts. And it was actually this year, there was a turning point where I went to post a picture of Red River Gorge, Kentucky from our climbing trip. It was a picture of a day that I had a massive panic attack, probably one of the worst panic attacks of my life. Not even on a hard climb. I was just in such a bad headspace. I completely lost it. Eric was great, but I would barely even talk to him. It must have been an hour that I was just sitting there, couldn't breathe, couldn't take in anything from the world, nothing. And I had this moment where I thought, do I post this as this nice picture, these adventures we go on, or do I be honest and say, hey, I struggle? And as someone who's always been a high achiever and had a hard time asking for help, it was a scary decision. But I decided, yeah, I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to tell what's going on with me, what I experienced. I wrote this big, long post about how I had this horrible panic attack and I thought I was the biggest failure in the world and I was convinced my life would fall apart. And I was astounded by the feedback I got from people I knew, people I didn't, and how much support. And it was this moment where I realized I need to be more honest about what I experience. It's not all good stuff. There's lots of good going on, but like any human, we all struggle. And especially if you're doing hard things, if you're adventuring, if you're pushing yourself, you go through a lot of dark places too, and no one talks about them enough, and you feel like you're alone, and it's a struggle. And the part of the struggle is feeling like you're so isolated and no one else understands. So I started talking about it more and more. I started making videos talking about it, really trying to say, if you're struggling, it doesn't matter. Like, you're not alone. You can have anxiety and you're still a worthwhile human being who can do amazing things. You can achieve great stuff, but let's just talk about it more. Let's be honest. So really my mission just on my personal Instagram now, there's definitely cool pictures of outdoor adventures for sure, because I want to capture the wins as well. But there's also the dark side. And here, I'm struggling with this. Here's how I've dealt with this. Try this. And to really just connect and tell people, like, you're not alone if you're struggling. We all do. And so it's really become an outlet for that and just speaking about anxiety. I say on my bio, I speak about anxiety like it's my job, and I feel like I do. And it's just been awesome. Like, the things I learned that people in my family who I thought were so rock solid, and then they tell me, oh, I went through a phase where I had panic attacks, or I've had anxiety too. And it's just amazing by being vulnerable and being authentic, how much more you connect with people. And I think we need more of that. So I try as hard as I can to put that out there.
Well, and I think one of the things that people can learn is that you can still get shit done. You can still sort of plug along, but life is not sort of the curated wonderland that social media sort of started off as or became. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you do something cool, you post it. But if you're going to, as you did, where you had that struggle of going, okay, I have this cool image, but the image isn't true. Mm-hmm. Do I tell the truth or not? And one of the things you find is like telling the truth, right? You know, and I hate this phrase, but even if it's just your truth, right? You know, it's like living in your truth. And it's like, I don't know, it's some millennial shit I don't get. But the thing is that there is fundamentally a thing where you know if you're lying. Mm-hmm. And there's a power in just standing up and telling the truth.
The truth will set you free.
You know? Yeah, sometimes it puts you in jail.
Another millennial maybe line for you?
No, that came long beforehand. You know, but there's that thing of like, basically telling the truth means confronting the world like on its terms, right? Yeah, I'm fucked up. Like personally, I've dealt with depression, and you know, the things of like your brain malfunctioning on you essentially. Right. And going, you know, and one of the things I've developed to work on it is almost like a checklist going, oh, okay, I feel like shit. Do, go down the list. My life is amazing. Brain's malfunctioning again. You know, it's almost like this disassociative state that I've trained myself, you know, through therapy and, you know, what have you, to be able to look at it and go, oh, I'm having one of them. Okay, well, I know. Go make sure I dial in the food, like nutrition, because I find, you know, if there's too much sugar, blah, 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 that can mess you up. Sleep, exercise, you know, like get all my ducks in a row. And then obviously being in a position where you go, if you get, you know, all the things that you have some control over, you approach, and if they don't work, then you're wise enough, because you've been down the road a few times, to go, okay, I need some help. You know? Because if you had a problem with your car, you wouldn't bat an eyelash about taking it to the mechanic. Well, if your body or your brain, you know, like some people get offended that I refer to it as malfunctioning, but if the way I look at it is that if you have a super negative view and there isn't a reason for it, then there's something, like the inputs and the outputs aren't lining up.
And I mean, that's certainly how it feels. Like I'll say, like it feels like my brain's just turned on me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, malfunctioning, I don't know, people can get upset about that, but it's definitely how it feels when you're in it.
Yeah. Like, and it's that kind of thing where when you're first experiencing it, right? And it's the thing of like, I think I'm going to die, right? Like, especially something like panic attacks. I've only had a couple in my life. Like anxiety disorders, not sort of, my corner of the mental disorders. But it's one of those things where you run into, literally you think you might be having a heart attack or like, I can't breathe. And the whole world is caving in on you. And what's fascinating is that if you can be present enough to just work on your breathing, then the parasympathetic nervous system gets downgraded. And then it's like, all of a sudden, not that makes everything disappear, but you control the breathing, and then so much of the anxiety drops. These are sort of like those fascinating, stupid human tricks that I find.
Yeah, and I mean, something I've learned, once you get to a panic attack, about all you can do that's helpful is breathe and slow your breathing. And like you said, calming, getting into that parasympathetic nervous system again.
Yeah. And in a sense, it's almost, this is advice for both of you. Have panic attacks or you have a weed brownie that's a little too strong.
Multi-purpose.
Yeah, you just got to ride that shit out. Don't do anything stupid. Right? Just ride it out.
And I mean, interestingly,
Yeah.
I found that same advice that's helped me with panic attacks helps me when I'm freaking out and get in a weird headspace climbing too.
Yeah.
I'll be up there, I start panicking, and it's like, okay,
Breathe.
start breathing.
Well, and it's fascinating how a lot of the systems in our body are regulated. Like if your fight or flight response kicks in. Right? If you, and slow it down, everything down regulate. It almost becomes one of those things where you have so many variables because there are studies that show like smells in nature, upregulate certain things and downregulate other things. There's a whole field that we just started like looking at of grounding.
Oh, yeah.
Right? The whole idea that we're carrying a certain charge, and normally it would be, sort of balanced and equalized because we're in contact with the earth, right? You're grounded, just like an electrical wire would be grounded. Lightning hits, it grounds out. But we walk around in insulated rubber shoes, right? So having... and there's been studies done with it. People that sleep on a grounding mat, and it's kind of fascinating because all they'll do is get some conductive sheeting underneath their sheets, and literally ground it like you would plugging a plug in, right? Because that connects it to the ground. And the studies of it start to show that when people do that, they actually get a change in rhythm of their sleep. And just like a whole bunch of girls hanging out, the periods line up. What they ran into...
Magic of the universe.
Yeah. Well, what they ran into, and it's because the electrical charge of the Earth changes as it rotates because when it's not getting sun, overnight, the charge will change. So you actually see this ramping of the exchange of electrons between the people and the grounding, essentially. And everybody syncs up time-wise. Right? It's almost like a circadian rhythm, but actually, so there's all of these things as far as the being outside, the challenging ourselves, the getting exercise, the smells and, phytonutrients that come from nature. It really is kind of like a fascinating thing. I wish people smarter than me would start to study it a bit more so that we sort of understood where all the different health benefits came. Because we sort of understand exercise fairly well to an extent. But all of this other stuff why do we get so much when we spend all this time out in nature, right? And then if you spend, like extended periods of time in a concrete jungle, like you feel like you're going fucking crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And it's getting worse because of access to technology, right?
Oh, yeah. You can be out in nature, but you're so connected that are you really there? Are you present?
Yeah.
See tons of people walking around hiking outside, just taking pictures for Instagram, right? Like,
well, the part that's good with that is that the people who take pictures for Instagram are steadily dying off because they
walking off
fall
cliffs. Yeah.
So at least us climbers, if we're taking pictures of cool stuff, like we know how to set that shit up. Like we're not doing like the dumbass, like, oh, walk back a little more, walk back a little more, walk back a little, fall in the Grand Canyon, like the guy did last year. Rest in peace. So basically, how do you guys work it as far as, if you want to call it that, work-life balance? Is it just a case where you work what you got to work because somebody else gives you those constraints, and then you fit the adventures in wherever you can? Or is there sort of a more proactive way you're able to engineer that?
For me, I work it in when I can, generally weekends and vacation. I'm lucky to have 4 weeks of vacation that a lot of people don't have. So I try to plan the most climbing trips around the time of the year that it's going to be good, like climbing in Kentucky or West Virginia, and plan my trips, my vacation time around that. Weekend trips, hiking, climbing, camping, but you're so restricted when you have a job like I have that you can't just take off the best time when the weather's the greatest. Mm-hmm. And it feels horrible when the next upcoming weekend is going to be rainy and miserable. And you could have been up at Beaver Valley climbing on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, for example. There would have been nobody there. So yeah, for me, it's very much working around the time that I can get off to have the adventures that I want.
Yeah. And how about you?
Yeah, and I mean, I have more flexibility right now.
Because you're a girl. Like, you can all touch your toes.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's easier for me to say, lately I've been taking off in the mornings and going and hiking on my own. And that's actually been incredibly therapeutic.
Nice.
First time I did that in years, you just think to yourself, why haven't I been doing this since? It's amazing. You feel like a child again in a way.
Yeah.
Especially when you have nothing in your ears and you're just kind of, you notice all these things and it's so playful and fun. But I mean, in terms of taking trips, of course, we have to work around Eric's schedule. So right now it's fitting it in when we can. I'm quite optimistic that won't be the case for our whole lives. We're both pretty adventurous. And I think I'm at least pretty dead set on creating a lifestyle for us that we can have that flexibility. Like, I love to work hard. I want to work on something I care about, but I also want to live my life. Back to that work-life balance. And so I think we'll find a way to make it work. But yeah, right now, you fit it in when you can. There's been times he'll get off work at about 3:30 or so, and we'll head to Rattlesnake and climb.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And it's actually not that busy. So you only get in a little bit of time, but it's not busy. It's nice.
You got headlamps. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Just rig up some sort of fancy rigging, so you get like almost studio lights, like they're shooting a movie there. You can climb. It works.
They close at 9, and then they take your license plate number if your car's still in the parking lot.
Really?
I'm on the record.
Yeah, I've actually run into that where you're getting out after dark and you actually have to go open the gate.
That was one of our early dates. And I remember being in the car, the passenger seat, being like, oh no, we're locked in here. I don't know him well enough. Like, how are we going to figure this out?
That's funny. Romantic sunset on the cliff.
Yeah. What I think is really kind of cool too, though, is that we have more people that are going, you know what? I don't want to be, having a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
Going, what did I do with my life? Because time flies.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Right? Sure does.
And it basically, people are living more intentionally. And that's one of those things where, it gives me a lot of hope, right? Because people are doing things for a reason, not because they're sort of in an automaton, mode where it's like, I'm doing this because, do this, what everybody does, right? Like most of the time when you ask people like how they got where they are, they don't know. Like they sleep.
Yeah, or if they did, it's because other people said that was a good opportunity.
Yeah.
But I loved what you said earlier, Alyssa, about you're going back to doing things that you remember as a child or that are childlike, and I feel the same way. I went back to hiking.
Just don't go back so far that you poop your pants.
Yeah, but I went back to the things that I loved as a kid, which was just going back to the forest. And since we've actually started this podcast, as much as I was afraid to do it, I hadn't realized how rewarding it would be doing what you love, talking to cool people. And it's actually transferred back into my professional world, right? These skills, even the lessons from rock climbing of going for it and facing your fears, and becomes second nature to do new things in my business world. But it's just so rewarding doing the things that you loved as a child and bringing that back into your life.
Absolutely. And I mean, even conquering fears and doing those adventurous things that you're a little worried about, it can't not transfer over into your life. You gain this confidence. Yeah, I can get in these weird, crazy situations, but in the end of the day, like, we figured it out. We got through it. And that has to spill over into your life.
It's almost like an exposure therapy. The hard things in life aren't as heavy because it's like you've done scary things, you've done hard things, you've got a bit of like psychological conditioning, if you will. It's just like almost in a sense, as trite as this might sound, it's almost like working out. Like if you don't normally work out and you start working out, you're sore. But if you work out regularly, you don't get sore much.
I mean,
right?
Really, it's working out your brain.
Yeah.
It is.
Because all of that is basically how you perceive the world, right? And if you're not conditioned to anything, or you don't have a lot of experiences, everything is scary, right? But then you run into the thing where you've had a lot of different experiences. Then when you do new things, you go, well, I did this and this and this. Well, let's give it a shot. Like that's almost like the little voice that plays in your head, where it's not like there isn't a trepidation or fear, but confronting fear is a skill like anything else. And most people just never do it, right? So when you do it and you've won or lost, but you did it, then you do it again, and then you do it again, and you do it again, and then it's just like, oh, I know how to do this.
That was like me falling off the rock today, although it was very low off the ground.
And you fell on my head.
I did.
Really?
Yeah. And he's like, what the fuck? And I'm like, hey,
I slipped.
But I'm like, he's like, what the fuck was that? I'm like, well, I went for it. And at the end of the day, I didn't care. It was the first time I fell and I didn't care. And I didn't know I was going to fall. Maybe that's why.
That usually helps.
First time I didn't even know I was going to fall and I just fell. And I fell right. But that was kind of neat.
Yeah.
If you don't know what's coming, those are the best falls.
Yeah, it was more just a thing where like
I felt like a spider going to fly. It was the coolest feeling ever. There was rope stretch.
But I think the big part was that what I was surprised with is you pulled off the hard part and then fell on the easy part.
Oh.
Listen, so I just went what was up, because I've run into that before. I made it through the crux and went, oh, I've done it.
Yeah, but it's exposure therapy for sure.
Yeah. And then, but that's the thing. It's like when you've done these different things, like, because obviously you started climbing, 6 years ago, you said?
Yep.
Do you find that then when you get stressful things in other parts of your life, that you sort of go, yeah, I'll handle it? Like, it's just more, I'm not exactly stoic in a sense, but just it doesn't seem as overwhelming because you've just got more tools in your toolbox to deal with it.
Yeah, for sure. Or I just find that I'll just go rock climbing to get through the stress of daily life.
Works two ways.
Yeah.
Like for me, rock climbing is the best stress relief I've ever found. Anything else I've ever tried is not even comparable to climbing. It's so focus intensive that it takes your mind off of everything that's going on in the world or at work or whatever. And it's just all of a sudden you have a clear head and you feel 100% better.
Yeah. Well, because I think like the only two things that I've done that sort of fall into that are rock climbing and MMA.
Yeah, I can see that would be similar.
Right? Because
either way, you're going to get hurt.
you're going to get
Especially if you boulder.
yeah, you're either going to get punched in the head or choked out if you lose that presentness, right? You're not thinking, oh well, you know, you know. But yeah, like it is. It's like it's almost like taking almost a cheater path to presentness, you know. If presentness, is that the right way to
No.
being present? Is that a better way to put it? Being, you know, in your true self and things, whatever. But that idea of being present, which is being in the moment, climbing kind of, you don't have to sit there and ohm and do any kind of weird meditation or anything. Get on the rock. Nothing else exists.
Oh, it's
Right?
totally a shortcut. I remember going through a really bad relationship in my life, and I'd go climbing all the time, and I'd stress about it on the ground, right, at the gym. Soon as you get on a climb, it's gone. It's
Yeah.
like, that is not a problem that exists in your world. And then you'd get down and you'd think about it again, but you jump back on a route.
Yeah.
And by the end, you've kind of worked some of it out of you. So it's definitely a therapy. And I mean, especially for Eric, if he's getting all mopey or grumpy, I straight out say, like,
Go to the gym.
Yeah, go climbing. And it works. I mean, he gets it.
Well, because I think it's almost one of those things where I have this theory, right? And it'll compete with like Freud and Jung. I call it the front counter and the elves in the back, right? So people think they're in control of themselves. You know, when you have an idea, you think you thought it. And really, what you think of as you is just the front counter person, right? That the world deals with. It's like, next, can I help you? And all of your processing is the elves in the back, right? They're doing all the work. And then it's like somebody asks you a question and you just sort of don't know how you came up with the answer, but it just popped up, but that's the elves giving it to you, right? And the more we can, you know, almost like integrate our elves with our front self, so we're like a complete human being and have an idea.
We're talking to each other.
And have an idea of why we do the things we do and why. Because think about, you know, and this is just an interesting idea, but you have no control over what you like. Right? Like, think about that. Like, do you have free will if you have no idea or no control over what you like? Right? You just either like something or you don't. Right? You've never went, this thing, I'm going to decide I like it. Right? We have no control over that. Right? That's sort of like all the elves go on, you know, come up with a bunch of data and then put it out and go, these are the things. That other stuff, not so much. You know? And I think we run into the thing where when we do things like if people meditate, when we climb, when we get in the flow state, you know, that athletes, you know, occasionally do, it's almost a case where then we're integrating the front and the back, right? Because we're all as one. And I find that because you can't stay there, but having those experiences there almost then gets the front and the back talking better, if that makes any sense. Because I find when you go through those periods where you're not doing things that get you in that state is when more things go wrong with the brain.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
You know.
Well, there's constantly that nagging, which I think is what creates the anxiety. Something's telling you something's not right, and
It's
you can't reconcile it, right? And so you have all these feelings, and I think ththose feelings are from the elves, right? Call it that.
The elves.
Your subconscious. I just can't get over how me climbing Chapel Pond Slab, 850 feet the first time.
It's funny. Every time she says how tall it is.
It's fucking tall.
It's 850 feet, not 49, not 51, but 50.
Well, that's the qualifier. It's a big fucking deal. And it took me like a day and a half of getting over that adrenaline, seriously. And then the second time I did it, no sweat. Like,
You were sweaty a little bit.
yeah, a little bit.
And it's a bit of work.
But anxiety. But yeah, I mean, I just think that something completely shifted, and it's going back to exposure therapy, right? And so I totally, 100%, I think rock climbing is not only good for individuals but teams. I think.
Well, because you got to be a team, or else somebody's.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm thinking about bouldering right now. Actually,
Oh, okay.
bouldering I think is
From
actually
that
got.
social?
I think bouldering's got a little bit more.
Bouldering's way more social.
Bouldering's got more problem solving, quite honestly, than I think a rope climbs do. There's always multiple ways to skin a cat. It's great teamwork. But you're conquering fears. You're always stronger than you think you are. It teaches you to go for it.
No, sometimes I think I'm really strong, and it turns out I'm not.
Well, that's you.
I've been doing it. I've been doing it long enough that I believe the hype, and then it's like, turns out, nope, I'm kind of a piece of shit today.
I always keep way more in the tank than anyways than I should. So anyways, I think that there's a lot of merit to rock climbing. And personally, I think that teams at work should do it. But although a lot of people are always afraid of falling and twisting an ankle. And
Yeah, fear of heights and falling definitely is one. I mean, I know part of what we did was consulting, and that was not a common thing they did, but it was a team building activity that would be done sometimes, taking teams out, corporate teams, and doing rock climbing together. And I heard people would be very nervous about it at first.
sure.
But it ended up being a really useful team building exercise for people. I mean, you're relying on
totally.
other people, you're going
Totally.
through fears together.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's why you see units in military with such strong bonds. People are in the war and they're fighting to save their brother and sister than they are for the country, I think.
Yeah.
And I think some of the best examples of showing human potential and performance is in the military, like that gentleman that you mentioned, and I forget his name, but the point
Goggins.
is,
Yeah.
David.
That's all you need to know.
but because they're facing challenges, right? And otherwise, people in everyday life don't. They don't have to.
Well, this is something that I've harped on for years, which is if you truly want, like in modern society now, you could never leave your comfort zone. Like you could get a like soul-sucking shitty job, but it pays the bills. You're not going to get fired. There's not too much stress. It's, you're not striving for anything, but and it's almost like you've seen movies like this, right? When they do sort of before the character, that thing that happens to them that makes them have to be extraordinary, that mundane circle they're going in. It's just this cycle of each part of their day is just like this monotone kind of thing. And then something, it's sort of a movie trope. But you could live that way. You could never do anything that gets you out of your comfort zone, and you would never have a clue what your potential is, because you basically as human beings, and we could use sort of like muscle metaphors or all these kinds of things, but you have to have a load put on you, right?
Totally.
And you bear that load, and it makes you stronger.
So I just want to be clear, though. I don't think people should get up and quit their jobs after listening to this podcast.
I think you should. Fuck it. Life's too short.
But here, I think there's a transition, right? I think that if you can bear it, I think that you should, on the side, pick up the things that you're passionate about and start to engage in that. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of those things, those skills that you pick up, could translate into what you're doing to maybe be more outspoken, to start positioning yourself for something different, or as a transition or whatever. Right?
But here's what I will say. Don't wait for everything to be perfect before you take action.
I agree with that.
Right?
Yeah.
The one thing I regret, and I will say this on air, and I would have been afraid to say this on air before, was I've been in economic development all my life. Since late 90s. That's a long time. I never thought I'd be in economic development all my life. And I did it because it was a good job, right? And I always wanted to work in industry. I do love what I do. I get to work with industry, and I have a lot of flexibility doing it. But variety is really interesting as well. And if there's one thing that I regret, it's not having more of that variety, as far as something completely
That's
different.
why I like buffets.
Yeah.
Which is true, like totally, like sort of unrelated, but like when I see if somebody brings out one good steak, it's like, but somebody like a whole bunch of things.
Well, yeah. Well, that's why I had this little side buffet on the side. You know, it's this podcast.
Yeah.
Which is giving me a lot of satisfaction.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not even work. So
Yeah, we talk to people and we write shit and we take pictures.
we do.
Pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty good
There we
setup.
go.
So I think that's going to be wrapping up this episode. Alyssa, Eric, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Do tell us if people want to follow your adventures. Where can they check you guys out?
So the best place we have now with our van build, we're posting all of how we did it, our failures, our successes, nice and raw. And that is at stealthcampervans.com. We're also on Instagram as Stealth Campervans. But you can also follow me if you're interested, especially in the anxiety and adventure and using the outdoors and adventure to improve your mindset, really. You can find me at Alyssa Outdoors on Instagram and Facebook.
Super. We'll add that to the show notes. So there you
And
go.
everybody, if you be so kind, if you like listening to the show, go on iTunes, give us a positive review. We like the 5 stars because we want more people to listen to the show. And the more good reviews we get, then the more we get featured on app. You know how this shit works. It's like subscribing on YouTube and hitting the notification bell. We don't have that with podcasts. But,
there you go. And subscribe to our podcast and our website.
Yeah. And go to livewildradio.com.
Winston, what's our tagline?
What do we do?
I'm asking you this time. You
I
have
know.
to ask me.
I wrote it. I know what it is. I'm building some
How
dramatic.
about you guys? How about what's our tagline? Do you know?
Something about getting dirty, I think.
Yeah, hey, that's right.
Bear chick, bear.
Bam, bam. That's right, ladies and
Dirty.
gentlemen. Work hard, play dirty.
Ah.
Bow, chicka, bow, bow.
Bye.
Till next time.